The wicked borrow and do not repay. That's from Psalms in the Bible. Is this where America is headed? That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. And with arguments, or I guess it's called debates, over the debt ceiling on Capitol Hill raging between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans, of course, who want to rein in the spending, and Democrats, of course, who want to bankrupt America and destroy the dollar as a form of global currency and set America down a path of financial enslavement. And that's putting it mildly. Debates are raging over that on Capitol Hill, the raising of the debt ceiling. From a biblical perspective, though, debt carries some serious consequences, and it's not really approved by God. Before I get into all that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app. That is your online platform for faith-based podcasts. At WashingtonTimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my Monday, Wednesday, Friday newsletter. Just go to WashingtonTimes.com, find the newsletter section, click on it, find Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. Click on that and subscribe. You'll get my commentaries as well as my Tuesday and Thursday podcast delivered right to your email box in time for lunch, usually. Isn't that a blessing? Yes, it is. Also, one more quick note. You may also get Bold and Blunt. Guess what? Wherever podcasts are offered. So let's talk about this debt ceiling and look at some of the headlines out there. Warning, warning, warning about the perils and pitfalls of not spending more, because as Joe Biden's financial advisors and experts have told us, recessions are actually signs of a chugging along healthy economy. Yes, that is indeed a couple years ago what Joe Biden's own financial experts were trying to sell us members of the public, us peon Americans who, what's a dollar? I don't know. I guess they thought we were too stupid to figure out that when you go into debt, that it's not a good thing. Anyhow, here's the latest movement on Joe Biden's economy. Analyst on what lies ahead in the market post-debt ceiling vote blasts the Casper Star Tribune. That's Casper, Wyoming. Liberal, right? World dodges bullet after U.S. debt agreement, but Trump allies aren't happy, iNews put out there. Here's one from Reuters. The Joe Biden fawning Reuters. If you read enough of Reuters, you see that anything on the left, they love, love, love. Anything that reeks of conservatism, they hate, hate, hate. It was really sickening how Reuters gave Bill Gates during the coronavirus the star power treatment. He could do no wrong. And they regularly do the same for Joe Biden, Team Biden, and Team Biden's White House. Risks lie ahead for U.S. credit standing after tentative debt ceiling deal, blasts Reuters just a couple days ago. Well, here's the thing. If you don't have the money to spend, shouldn't you not spend? That's where America stands right now. We don't have the money to spend. We don't. And we really haven't had the money to spend since we moved ourselves off the gold standard, right? And then thus entered in the era of fake money, fabricated money, fancy money, federal money, just created money. They can make money out of thin air. Well, money out of paper anyhow, but it's about as truthful as thin air money, because money loses its meaning when it's not backed by something of value. I mean, I can sit at home and cut up dollar-sized pieces of paper, decorate them, and call them a dollar bill, call them legal tender to pay for all U.S. debts, but it's not based on anything. It's meaningless. Well, really, so is America's currency these days, because it's not really based on anything except what the feds, the bankers, the wealthy elites, and some in the political world tell us it's worth. This is why, by the way, the federal government would love to go to digital currency, because not only could they tell us what things are worth, what things have as a worth in terms of value, what they should go for on the market, but they can also control how much you and I get of it. And they can shut off that spigot anytime they want. That is fodder for a different discussion, different day. But today, right now, the debt ceiling and why the left wants to remove the debt ceiling, right? America is one of the few nations in the world. I think there's only one other if you listen to the World Economic Forum's reporting on this and trust in it. The World Economic Forum reports that the United States and Denmark are the only advanced economies that use debt ceilings. Every other country doesn't have one, right? And so go to World Economic Forum's webpage, weforum.org, and read the piece entitled, "What's a Debt Ceiling Anyway, and Why Does the U.S. Have One?" It was posted May 26th, right? And so the piece doesn't explicitly say America should get rid of its debt ceiling, but all signs point toward that direction. Everything put forth in this commentary, in this analysis, in this piece suggests that America is just way old-timey by keeping that silly old debt ceiling in place, that we need to get rid of it. Well, guess what happens when a country spends more than it has? It crumbles. Same thing in your house. If you run your household finances, if you go out and spend more than you have, the first thing that happens is you go into enslavement to debt, right? Because when you work and all the money you make has to go out immediately to pay for bills, you're living in a form of slavery. You don't have freedom to move about. You don't have freedom to make choices that you might otherwise have. You don't have the ability to make decisions that you would like to make because your whole world is tied up in paying off debt. And the second thing that happens, if you don't end up paying off the debt, is that your household finances crumble, and depending on the sources of the debt, you either lose stuff, have to declare bankruptcy, or if you owe, say, the IRS or the government, you could find yourself being feed to death, feed and fined, and possibly losing your home, your cars, your freedom, and ultimately put in jail. That is how it works in the household economy. So why is the federal government any different? How come the federal government can spend, and when it outspends its resources, it just creates that old magic money, that paper money called tender, which is not based on anything except what the federal government, the reserves, the bankers, the wealthy tell us it's worth. It's a disastrous path that America is treading right now, because we are heading down a path of slavery. We are heading down a path that puts our youth in positions where they cannot live free, where they cannot do the things that even we, a generation removed, have been allowed to do. And this is all being pushed by the globalists who would love to see America crumble. Look, they're doing it based on the culture. Look at how China, Marxism, and so forth, globalism, is feeding into our children's mind through the schools. Pro-China, anti-capitalistic. Pro-communism, anti-free market. America's bad. America founding fathers bad. Racist, white, evil men. That rot is spreading through our culture right now into the minds of our next generation of leaders. But that's not fast enough for some in the globalist world, right? That's not fast enough. You have to wait a generation till these people who have been trained in the socialist, communist way to go grow up and assume positions of leadership in society before they start seeing results from their spread of socialist, communist rot. A quicker way to do it is to kill the economy, right? To get people in such chaos that things go on fire, like in Greece. Remember the newscast coming out of Greece a few years ago, right? Fires in the street, people running to banks to take out money that wasn't there, violence. George Soros would love to see that in America, and so would his pinhead friends at the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and so forth. And This is why you have the World Economic Forum posing, oh, so analytically and above the fray in this May 26 piece. What's a debt ceiling anyway? And why does the U.S. have one? Well, the U.S. has one because historically in America, we have wanted to control spending so as to remain free. We have this thing called separation of branches, right? And the legislators are supposed to control the purse strings. It's called power of the purse. The U.S. Constitution puts it this way: all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. That's Article 1, Section 7, Clause 1. Or how about this? No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. Again, U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7. These are controls placed on the political ruling elites, so they cannot take our tax dollars, tax us to death, and run roughshod over our own pockets and pocketbooks in order to bring about their own personal selfish ambitions. These are controls placed on spending. So the debt ceiling goes along with that, right? The debt ceiling is supposed to be the top level amount that government is allowed to spend, the federal government is allowed to spend before they have to cut spending. There's something you don't hear talked about too often on Capitol Hill. Cut spending? What? It's not my money. Why do I have to cut spending? You cut spending. So the debt ceiling is supposed to be a protection to the people and a protection on the power of the purse to maintain the right of the legislative branch to control spending. Because after all, it's the legislative branch that is closest to the people, most accountable to the people, most easily able to be displaced by the people during elections. And now we have on Capitol Hill a total disregard for any type of controls on spending. Thank you, Barack Obama, for raising the debt ceiling about a bazillion times. Thank you for the runaway spending. Thank you, Joe Biden, for continuing to raise the spending in America to the point where we will all be in the poverty house soon enough. But thankfully, that's when big government, the globalists in government, will come in and save us, right? And give us that universal basic income that the globalists and the leftists love to push forth. Because after all, things need to be equitable. Equity is what matters, not equality, not equal opportunity to pursue and succeed based on one's own interests, talents, and ambitions, but rather equity, where all get the same amount. Whether you want to achieve or whether you don't want to achieve, you all receive the same amount. This is where America is hurtling. And even Republicans on Capitol Hill aren't doing enough to reel in spending, to rein in the debt, and to slow the roll of peril that America is walking. Debt equals slavery. That's all there is to it. My guest today, he has been watching this debt growth with growing alarm himself. And he writes daily in columns across America. He is a syndicated columnist, but he is also an author, and an author that I love to read. I love his columns. He's my favorite columnist. I love his books. He's one of my favorite authors. His latest book is called A Watchman in the Night. Cal Thomas. He is a repeat Bold and Blunt guest too, so check out past shows with him. But today we're going to talk about the debt ceiling, his book, A Watchman in the Night, as well as the problems in America and how they all tie back to faith. Cal Thomas, thank you so much for being here. I am super glad to have you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Glad to be with you as always.
And I'm excited about your newest book, A Watchman in the Night, because as I read it, it's a reflection on your 50 years in journalism. Could you sort of describe why you wanted to write this book?
Well, I'd like to say to make money, but, that would be pretty crass. So I'll say, as I enter the 40th year of my syndicated column, I thought it would be fun and interesting and even instructive for readers to go back and look at what has happened in the last 40 years. The column began in 1984, in the middle of Reagan's second term, and it's amazing how many things have not changed. The arguments are about the same. The arguments over the Supreme Court, the economy, the culture, although I think they've gotten worse, and we've seen that in recent days with Target and Kohl's and even Chick-fil-A, the Los Angeles Dodgers, all kinds of other challenges to what used to be known as objective truth and cultural norms. I'm kind of proud of the diversity, I hate to use that word now, of endorsements I have, which kind of reflects my ability over the years, my desire to make friends on all sides. On the left, we have Henry Louis Gates Jr. of Harvard, who gave me a nice blurb, and on the right, Pat Sajak of Wheel of Fortune.
Wow.
I should have gone after Vanna, but she was busy picking out dresses.
You've always been my favorite columnist. I told you this last time I was on the show. I love your columns. I love how you write, mostly because you weave so expertly faith with politics and culture. In your columns, you don't shy from going there. And I just wonder, through the years, is this something that you made a decided approach to do, or have you always been weaving faith into your politics from the very first column?
Well, I would say that, the two can't really be separated, even though Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world, when he stood before Pilate. Still, we have privileges here to share his message of the gospel and to remind people that truth exists. I remember something Ted Koppel, the ABC journalist, said years ago at a commencement. Truth is not a polite tap on the shoulder. Truth is a howling reproach. Today, we argue if truth even exists, not what it is. We used to have debates on what truth is, but now we don't even have debates on that subject anymore. Everybody has their own truth. You have yours, I have mine, and even if they're contradictory, as long as they make us feel good, it's okay. 1 and 1 is 3 in some math classes because we don't want kids to feel bad about getting the wrong answers. There are no valedictorians or salutatorians in schools anymore because the underachievers might feel bad and go shoot up a post office. So this is the kind of approach we have now, and it is not promoting the general welfare, to borrow a phrase from the preamble of the Constitution. So I have taken a look at the world as it's passing by and headed in one direction. And I start with a biblical standard of right and wrong, of good and evil. And as I wrote in a previous book called What Works, we ought to be focusing on what actually works instead of political agendas. We're not the first people ever to walk the earth. We have a history. We don't live in the past, but we should learn from the past. Solomon, who wrote Ecclesiastes, said there's nothing new under the sun. Everything you think has been thought before. Everything you do has been done before. So why repeat error and not repeat success?
You raise an interesting point that we're arguing now over truths. What are truths? What is truth? Does truth even exist? And I just wonder if you have any, reflection on this. Do you find that more as a political battle or more as a spiritual failure in America right now?
Well, I think it's both, Cheryl. I mean, let's just take a look at economics. I mean, John F. Kennedy cut taxes and started a economic revolution. Ronald Reagan cut taxes. He raised them later, of course, but and Donald Trump cut taxes. If you spend too much, if you incur enormous national debt, which we have now approaching $32 trillion, despite this phony debt limit deal, you're not going to survive as a nation any more than you would survive economically as an individual if you maxed out your credit cards and your borrowing limit at the bank and couldn't pay it back. They would come and grab whatever you have, from your house to your car to anything of value. But with the government, they just keep printing money. So there are three things that I think contribute to the fall of a nation or an empire. I wrote about this in a previous book. One is uncontrolled immigration without assimilation. Does anyone argue that we don't have that now? Massive national debt, we have that now. and a loss of a shared moral value system. And we certainly have that now. Johns Hopkins Hospital has just come up with a deal to offer 50 different gender identities to its employees,
Wow.
some of which I can't even pronounce. The Los Angeles Dodgers baseball team, after initially approving, then reneging, and now approving again, a gay pride night where the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence will be performing, an anti-Catholic group. And then again, you have all these corporations that are bowing the knee, from Target and Kohl's to Chick-fil-A. I mean, I think these are all reflective of a spiritual desert that now is sweeping the country. And it's not good for the long term. It's certainly not good for the short term, but for the long term, these are undermining the foundational principles that established this country.
It's devastating. And you put out so much there that I want to touch upon, but I want to go back to what you said about debt, because that is a current debate taking place in Congress and the White House right now. And it just seems to me, when you talk about raising the debt ceiling to pay for this and warning about government shutdown and so forth, that never part of the discussion is, hey, how about we spend less? Because if you look at your household finances, that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
Am I missing something here?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And, James Clyburn of South Carolina, a congressman, said we ought to just get rid of the debt limit. So, let the sky be the limit, not a debt limit. Well, it's a joke anyway, because if you're going to raise it every time the date comes up for it being imposed, then it's really not a debt limit at all. Here's the problem. Too many people have become addicted to government. Too many people wrap themselves around this notion of entitlement. During Medicare open season last winter, I watched a lot of TV ads, and there were at least 3 words that were included in every one of them: free, entitlement, and deserve. Now, when I was growing up in the Washington area, I was taught inspiration followed by motivation followed by perspiration improves any life. But now we penalize and tax and regulate the successful and rail against, if you're a Democrat, millionaires and billionaires, and we subsidize the unsuccessful. So what you penalize, you get less of, and what you subsidize, you get more of. Does anybody think that's a good idea? Only the politicians who want to addict more and more people to government, those on the left, because that helps perpetuate their careers. And that's what they do. And we've got to wean ourselves off of government and get back to government as a last resort and not a first resource if we want to continue to be the country our parents and grandparents handed down to us.
Well said. And, I remember when I was growing up that it used to be an embarrassment for people to purchase items in a store with food stamps. And now, no big deal at all. And it goes toward what you say about government entitlement, as well as what you say about the loss of shared morals in this nation.
Well, the amazing thing on this whole debt limit business, there was actually a debate over whether able-bodied people who are on welfare should be able to continue to get a government check when they're able-bodied and can work. You'll remember the Clinton-Gingrich welfare reform bill in the 90s.
Yes.
The left claimed that people would starve to death, they'd be homeless, they'd be sitting on the streets, which now they're doing, of course, in many of our cities, even with welfare. And they didn't. They went out and found jobs when they realized that the gravy train was no longer going to be stopping at their mailboxes. And that's just human nature. If my mother used to say, don't feed a stray cat because the cat will never leave. Well, once you get addicted to government, and this is what the whole illegal immigration thing is about, the left is going to say, well, now you better vote for us when you get the right to vote because those evil Republicans will take away your benefits.
Yep.
This is what the whole argument is about. It's just amazing to me that people who are able-bodied are not presumed to be able to work.
I see them out on the streets here, which is new to my Northern Virginia area where I live. The last few years, I've seen very able-bodied looking people out on the streets begging at red lights and stop signs for money. And I just think, where is this country headed?
Well, it's tax-free money. And you remember, you may be old enough to remember, I don't want to insult you, they used to have signs, "Will work for food." So I tried an experiment once and said, okay, come on, I'll take you over to McDonald's and buy you a hamburger. No, we don't want to do that. It's so they got rid of the signs, "Will work for food," and now they just say, "Homeless, God bless," and get out there with whatever, the flag or a cap, the sports team or whatever, and people give them the money, $1 here, $5 there, and a sub-local TV station, I recall, some years ago, followed a couple of these people after they got off the begging circuit, and they found that they got into a car,
Yep.
they had a home, and they're just taking in tax-free money. They don't have to report any of it. It's a great racket.
And like stray cats, they keep coming back for more.
That's right.
So in your excellent book, A Watchman in the Night, what are some of the most shocking revelations that you found, that you discovered as you were putting all this together?
Well, I think the sexual exploitation of young people especially,
Yes.
and of women generally, has increased markedly, not only with the pedophiles, the pornography online, all defended as First Amendment and the rest. It's just rapidly increasing, and people don't know or don't have the will to stop it. It's the most amazing thing. I mean, this is an outflow of the Playboy philosophy of Hugh Hefner. If you ever read through that, it's just an incredible document. And then the follow-up to that was Helen Gurley Brown's Cosmo magazine, which basically said the same thing that Hefner did. You can go out and have sex whenever you want with whomever you wish, and if you get pregnant, you get abortion, or you get your free birth control pills or whatever. And this has ruined not only the culture, but many, many relationships. Easy divorce, abortion, same-sex marriage. Now you have a town in Massachusetts which has approved polyamorous relationships, 3 or more, and women, doesn't matter, they'll be treated as we used to treat heterosexual married couples. So if there is no standard, then anything goes. And if there is no right or wrong, then everything is okay. But where does that lead? Look at other cultures that have done this, that have embraced this hedonistic spirit, whether it's the Roman Empire or some of the lesser-known ones. They're all in ruins now. What is to prevent the United States of America from heading in the same direction if we followed that path? And I argue, nothing. And we are well on that path to destruction. People ask me, well, how can we turn it around? Well, absent a spiritual revival, I tell them, got to get your kids out of the government indoctrination centers known as the public schools and the universities. We don't send our military to Russia and China to be trained. We train them here. But parents and grandparents willingly send their children into these re-education camps where they're taught all this gender fluidity junk, critical race theory. America is a bad country. ABC is doing this special on the 1619 Project, more propaganda. Everything has to be seen through the prism of racism. Why would you do that? I mean, I can't think of anything more harmful to a child to be exposed to this kind of junk.
You ever get just worn down writing your daily columns? Do you ever get to the point where you think, you look at the scope of what's going on and you look at exactly what you just outlined and everything you said was 100% true and more? And do you ever just feel like, what's it all for? Why should I just keep writing? What good is it doing?
What's it all about, Alfie? Always like that song. No, because a couple of things. First of all, I hope I'm being an encouragement to other people who believe as I do that there is at least one, there are probably more, but at least certainly you and some others in the media who feel this way. But secondly, and most importantly, and I should put this first, I feel that I'm called to do this by the God I worship and to convey his truth as best as I can to as wide an audience as I can. And so with those two things in mind, no, I never get discouraged because I know what the ultimate outcome is going to be.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that's why I love reading your stuff, Cal, because you are motivating, you are inspirational, and you always hit the nail on the head with truth. A Watchman in the Night, I assume people can get it wherever books are offered.
Well, no, Well, you'd have to go into a bookstore and ask for it, and after the person you ask expresses shock, maybe they'll order it or not. But the easiest way, of course, is online, Amazon, Books A Million, and Barnes & Noble. But thank you for that.
Cal Thomas, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I hope you come back soon.
Anytime. Thanks, Cheryl.
He's my favorite columnist for a reason. He is so dead on with his analyses and the way he discusses his points. It just, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. Very conversational, very smart. If you like Bold and Blunt, don't forget you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, the online platform for your faith-based podcasts, at washingtontimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter, and, of course, wherever podcasts are offered. As usual, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.